Hey YouTube, Do-It-Yourself Junkie 369 here, and today is day 57 of our RV-10 build, and we are still working on the elevators. And we left off on page 7, step 1, which is basically going through and deburring the edges of these ribs. So I'll be working on that. And first thing I'm going to do is take a file and round off these sharp corners that we just created by trimming. This time it specifically calls off rounding the end of these ribs so they don't cause a dent in the skin. The vertical stabilizer section, for some reason I don't remember stating that, and I ended up with some dents. You can go back and watch that video, but the plans specifically call off out rounding the tips of these ribs so you don't cause a dent in your skin. And luckily it says it in this section. Okay, so I skipped a day on video because all I did was drive to a friend's house and cut out part of the cradle. Pretty super easy. Probably spent an hour like marking this out and cutting it out. And on that, all I did was I used some leftover plywood from the EA bench table. So don't get rid of those scraps of plywood. Like here I have a little piece of scrap left that I'm going to cut up into pieces that will glue and screw to the cradle. That way I have something to clamp onto instead of using a piece of angled aluminum or whatever they're showing in the plans. And that is step 5, so I kind of skipped ahead a little bit. On page 8-7. So I guess before I continue on with steps 3 and 4, which is deburring and then bending some of these ribs, I'm going to finish this step up so the glue has a chance to set up before I actually need them. Step 4 is to open up this aft piece of the nose rib. And it's not very much, it's just 9 degrees. And because of that, I'm going to put a number 9 on both of these. That way I don't accidentally get them mixed up with the others. And then the second part of the step is to cut a hole right about here. And the diagram shows the nose rib as being solid, but these, I think they changed the design of it and they added these lightning holes to the nose ribs. So right about where that hole's supposed to go for the trim tab cable to go through, there's a giant lightning hole there. So we'll just go ahead and skip that part of the step and mark it as complete. And then step 5 is to make these cradles, and I've already had them sitting up with glue holding them together. I'll show you a close-up of how I made mine. Basically just leftover plywood from my EA table build. And then instead of doing a piece of angle on the bottom, I just took a piece of that plywood and glued it there. And now I'm going to put in some screws to kind of hold it together. In addition to the glue. If I had a long time to wait, I could let the glue sit up even longer, and that would give all the strength it needs. And for this, I'm using some number 6 drywall screws. They were the smallest screws I have, especially diameter wise, because I do not want to split the wood apart. And there's the completed bracket. And there's just enough wood on it that I can put these clamps on the underside of the table and hold it in place. So we'll go ahead and finish up the rest of these before moving on to the next page. And on this, I would make sure you pay attention to which way these nose ribs are facing. So you want to not know anybody from Jamaica. You want the folded portion to go inboard. And that's just on the 2 modified nose ribs. After that, it appears as though the folded portion goes outboard on all the other nose ribs. Just the modified ones point inboard. So basically you want them to open up into kind of a V shape when both are in place. Okay, on step 2 here, you're clecoing in these nose ribs, and the spacing on them is quite difficult to pick up. You're really going to have to pay attention to where they're going. And basically you have the inboard nose ribs. Then you have a set of 4 holes that you skip, and another set of 4 holes that you skip, and a third set of 4 holes that you skip. And all of those are going to get ribs in them on the other side. Just not yet. So you're skipping 3 sets of 4 holes, and then there's a set of 3 holes. That is your first position that you add a nose rib. And flanges point to the outboard. And they do mention that on there. The picture also helps. There. Then after that, all that remains is sets of 3 holes. But you don't stick a nose rib in every set. The nose ribs and the mid ribs are offset from each other. So you go over a set of 3 holes and you skip that one. Make sure I'm getting this right. Yep. So go over. The next nose rib goes over on the second set of 3 holes. So you have your first set of 3 holes gets a nose rib. Second set of 3 holes remains empty. Third set of 3 holes gets a nose rib. And then the last nose rib goes here at the end, but if you look really closely at that diagram, there's 2 sets of holes here. And the rib goes in the outside most set, and the nose rib goes on the inside most set. Or not most. So rib on the outside, nose rib on the inside, set of 3 holes. And even though this is on the end, the flange still faces out. If you don't get your flanges facing the right way, you might have some interesting problems later on. Now basically everything that's attached gets final drilled to number 30. So we'll start out with this short one, and then when we drill these, I'll break out the long one. Or I might be able to use the short one for that. Actually, I'll use the short one for that. Since these are flexing away, I'll just drill from the front side. I can't really get into these two as well as I planned, so I will use the long bit on those. Okay, so these Rhino 4 spars haven't been deburred yet. It says to install them here in step 3. And you could deburr them right now, but there's also a step in on page 9, step 6, you mark all the parts, disassemble them, and deburr all the edges and holes. So you can pick them up, you can do them now before you attach them, or you can do them later when you deburr the rest of the stuff. You just have to remember that the nose ribs and these 4 modified ones have already been deburred, and that you only have to deburr the holes. I think I'm going to put off deburring all of these right now and move ahead with the assembly, and I'll deburr them on the next page as part of step 6, just in the interest of getting this thing put together Basically, flanges face out on these, and they start where you have 3 holes. So there's a fairly large gap in here. Basically, there's some spots in here that I need to stick these unmodified 1004 ribs in. Okay, so step 7, there's no top, no bottom, no left or right, because these skins haven't been match drilled to anything. Biggest thing is, there is an inboard side and an outboard side. The outboard side is straight, the inboard side has an angle cut in it. So make sure you put those in the correct orientation. Now instead of taking this whole thing and jamming it in there, you take off each nose rib one at a time and Cleco it in. on this, getting these rib tips lined up. It might be easier to put the cleco in every hole, starting near the back of the rib and then working your right way forward, than to try to skip every other one. And then after you're done with putting them all in, you can take out some of them. Okay, that's a good place to end this one. Tomorrow we'll pick up on page 9. Hope you enjoyed the videos. If you did, please hit the thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. If you're planning on picking up your first kit and starting your own RV, make sure to check out the description below for my builder's number. It has a reward for me if you use that when you purchase your kit. Vange will send me $100. There's nothing extra on your part other than buying your first kit and making sure you give them that number. If you do so, I'd greatly appreciate it. It will help purchase my wing kit. If you want to see where I'm currently at, check out the builder's log. I have a link for that in the description as well. And so far I have 200 subscribers. Thank you everybody who subscribed. That's awesome. It's probably twice as much at least than what I had expected. Hopefully it continues to grow. And if you got any questions, please post them. I'll try to answer them. And that's about all I have for today. I've got to go in and try to do homework now. It's the last homework I have for the year, and then I'll be free to work on this thing until next May or June or whenever my next class is. I don't know exactly when it is yet. But again, thanks for watching. See you in the next video.